Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Horror Podcast. I'm Sean, and with me today is one of my old LA buddies, David Lucarelli. How are you doing, sir?
Hey man, I'm hanging in there. Good to see you.
So, for listeners, if you are unfamiliar with David, oh man, where do I even start? So, you have a greatest hits. So I feel like back on Drinking with Comics, we had you on for the Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade. Then you had Tinseltown, which is it's just an opus.
Oh well, thank you, man. There's going to be more after this project. We're going to jump back in and do some more Tinseltown. I
Nice. I'll put up links for this
was
stuff
going to say both are available in the current Kickstarter
as
as
add-ons.
add-ons as well. Yeah.
So, and the reason why David's on, I mean, it's good just to catch up, but he reached out and he's got a Kickstarter going right now for Dr. Zomba's Ghostly Tales.
Yeah.
And this is based on a play that you did. Was it, what year did this play
I
occur?
want to say we debuted it summer of 2018. Does that sound right?
Yeah, oh, wow, that was, um, and so describe the play and how it leads into this comic book that
Okay.
that is on the Kickstarter.
So the play was called Dr. Zomba's Ghost Show. And what it was really was a revival of a type of show that they used to do, was very popular in the 40s and the 50s, called a spook show. It's kind of a lost bit of Americana, but before there were modern day Halloween haunted houses and horror TV hosts and even the term immersive theater, these guys would go around, they would four-wall movie theaters, put on midnight shows that featured spooky magic and a seance and some burlesque. And the climax of every show was what they called a blackout sequence, where the audience was plunged into total darkness and surrounded by supernatural phenomenon that they could see, hear, feel, and touch. So these shows kind of died out, but we went back, we studied the Ghost Show manuals, we came up with a few tricks of our own, and we brought it back. We had two sold out runs in Hollywood, and then we did three performances at Midsummer Scream. And you saw the show, so you can talk
It
about
was
it from.
awesome. It was
Oh, thank
the blackout sequence was fucking nuts, man. It
you.
was like there's a moment where like I know I'm watching a show, but just for a moment it that slipped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I wasn't sure, which is almost impossible to do.
Right. Yeah, we were very proud at how it turned out and how we freaked out even some of the most seasoned people, horror people even came to us and told us they were like, "Oh, you got it. You got me."
I believe it.
Yeah. So, anyhow, I wanted to kind of cleanse my palate, get back to my roots, do a horror thing after Tinseltown, Losing the Light, the second book in the series. And I was researching the spook shows, and I found out that there's actually kind of a connection between comics and spook shows. One of the biggest ghost masters, they called them, was a guy named Dr. Neff. And he gave out a comic book as part of the program for his spook show. And he also appeared as himself in a series of comic books in the 1950s, where he would be what they call a ghost breaker. And this is, before Scooby-Doo. He would investigate supposed supernatural phenomena that was actually being done by criminals to dupe their victims in some circumstances. And so he would break them, being a ghost breaker, as it were. And so I thought, well, as long as there's a connection already between spook shows and comics, why don't I use Dr. Zomba, the main character from my spook show, to introduce each of the stories in the horror anthology that I'm writing. And I can also feature the rest of the cast of characters from the show in all the introductions and the epilogue and stuff. So I got my actors to sign likeness rights so I could, use their likenesses and all that
That's
good
cool.
stuff. Yeah, and it turned out great. I mean, the introductions are very much tongue in cheek, if you're a fan of Elvira or Svengoolie and that kind of
Oh, I love
humor.
Svengoolie.
Yeah, something along those lines. And then the stories themselves are more in the tradition of I hate to use the word elevated horror because that sounds so pretentious. Like my horror's way up here, yours is down there. But serious, good
Like
stuff.
non-schlock. I mean, and there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with schlock, right? No, I
no,
love schlock. Like
yeah,
I can watch Henenlotter and I can watch Ari Aster, and they're both just a different flavor.
yeah. So this is my two goalposts that I use, trying to shoot for the stars were EC Comics and the Twilight Zone, because I think those are both respective high watermarks. So I
Yes.
wanted to do kind of stories along those veins, but with a modern edge.
That's it's fantastic, and I love hearing this because I feel like there's a lot of these right now, but they're not. So they brought Creepshow the show back, and then they have a comic that comes out in 4 issue seasons or whatever, and I feel like the show and the comic are very similar in that they have like a good episode or issue up front, and then it kind of tapers off, and none of it's bad, but
Okay.
there's one. So I don't know if you know this. Oni Press is like making a big resurgence right now in comics, and they have EC, the rights to EC, and they're
I
doing
did see that.
Epitaphs from the Abyss.
Yeah.
Every fucking issue is great. Every
Okay, I
one of
have to
them.
get that. I have to get that. I had read that they were picking up the license, and I was very intrigued by that. So, yeah,
So
now that you told
impressed.
me it's good, I will definitely pick it up.
And so like I feel like this this format right now that you're playing with is out there, and I just welcome more editions. And I think just hearing you talk about how you approached it from this, like, oh well, okay, there is a link from the Ghost Show to the comic book, so I'm like, it just it makes sense. And man, I'm just very psyched to see this thing. So it's what exactly is on the Kickstarter? So Dr. Zomba's Ghostly Tales, it's like a giant sized
It's like a double-sized floppy, so like 42 pages or so of
okay.
comic content. Three different stories. Each story is done by a different artist, and then the introductions are done by a different artist as well. So basically, what you have is Kyle Roberts did the cover and did the intros featuring the Ghost Show characters. And then the first story is called Ghosted, and that story takes place in the present. It's in kind of in the realm of pickup artists and that
Okay.
world. And the art for that one, I felt like it was important to get some feminine energy into the mix. And so that's illustrated by Anna Visacik. She's a Polish artist, and she's kind of got a manga influence, but also very kind of fever dream like, the way
Ooh.
that she does her manga. And yeah, she's knocking it out of the park. I'm very, very excited with what she's come up with. And then the second story is illustrated by Tinseltown artist Henry
Henry,
Ponciano.
love
And
his art.
yeah, he's
I
fantastic.
love his art so much. So
Yeah,
much.
no, I know. And he also, he's one of those artists that can really adapt his art to the story that he's telling and make it, like kind of like Frank Miller, where to a certain extent he's really reinvents his whole approach. I mean, his art in Tinseltown is very different than his art in The Brigade and
Yep.
different here too. But anyhow, this story deals with what they call sin eaters. So, for those unfamiliar, back in the Middle Ages, if you were dying and you saw a priest and he gave you absolution and you didn't feel as if your mortal sins had been lifted from your soul, they would call in a sin eater who would perform these rituals on you as you were dying that would, and supposedly take your sins upon themselves. And so you could go to heaven. And what I thought was interesting is much like the essential workers during the pandemic that were like garbage men and grocery store workers that are commonly sort of looked down upon or judged, in society. Um, Here's a guy that can give you peace of mind, and that hard to put too high a price on that, and yet they are also shunned as undesirables in society as soon as they're not needed. So I thought that was an interesting playground for a story. And then the final story is called The Ghost in the Machine, and it kind of deals with man's relationship with technology and artificial intelligence in the near future. And so for that story, I got an artist named Brandon Perlow. And he's a really smart, really talented guy. He's the publisher, actually, also of New Paradigm Studios, which has published some great comics like Watson and Holmes and Werewolves and things like that. But
Okay.
he's also a great artist, and his day job is he's a visual effects guy. So he's on the cutting edge of technology and stuff. And I showed him the story, and he loved it and said this is great. So, that's the nice thing is that each artist that I showed the story to had a really positive response to the scripts, and it was really excited to work on it. So that made me feel like I probably chose the right people for the job.
So it's already done, and the
Well, it's okay. So it's not completely done. I had to kind of, if I had my druthers, I would love to say it's 100% in the can and we're ready to go. But Henry's story is completely done. The intros story and epilogue is completely done. Anna's story is majority done, and then the Ghost in the Machine is the one that I think he still has like 7 pages to turn in, but
well,
we'll
still, so it's mostly
we'll get
done, and you have
yeah, the majority
you
is
have a date on there, a tentative date of October, right? So
yeah. So we got a little
yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah, but so this isn't a Kickstarter where it's like people are backing it before you even put it together. Like it's put together. It's
No,
just
the
yeah,
scripts are all
you're at the 11th
completely
hour.
yeah, the scripts are all completely written. The art is either done or in progress. And yeah, worst case scenario, if we end up, shipping at Christmas instead of Halloween, that's the other time people like to tell ghost stories. So,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Wow. Um, oh man, I really I'll put the links in here. I think people should definitely check it out. So we were in yeah, you probably still are the horror writers in LA, and I don't know, just talk about some of your influence in the genre. It could be films, it could be literature, comics, anything.
Okay, yeah. I've always loved the horror anthology as a format. I think there's stories that I've just stumbled upon in horror anthologies that I think about, that just pop into my head from time to time and still haunt me. There's one that was an adaptation of a story by Roald Dahl on Tales from the Unexpected about this young man. He's a soldier. He's about to go off to war, and he stops to stay at this old woman's inn, and she's got this kind of museum of these disturbingly lifelike statues of young soldiers, and he's fascinated by them, and he's looking at them, and she offers him some tea, and too late he realizes that the tea contains within it a paralytic, and that he is about to become one of these statues. And from her perspective, she knows that the odds are that he's about to go off to war and probably die an incredibly horrendous and painful death. And she is saving him from that in her mind, I think, and preserving all of his youth and vitality, so that he never has to suffer like that. But that's one that definitely stuck in my mind where I was like, "Ooh, man." Uh,
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. Um, what else? What else? I've been listening to so many podcasts just post-pandemic uh,
Hmm.
that deal with not always supernatural, but some element of real life horror. Sometimes it's just like, oh, I think I met some guy that might have been a serial killer or some crazy person. I mean, there's Be Scared. There's the sort of generically entitled Let's Read. There's Let's Not Meet. There's Tales from the Break Room. It's a whole genre of podcasts. It's not quite true crime. It's all like anecdotal tales of people that have just had bizarre, sometimes supernatural, but always disturbingly scary real life experiences. Um, and I'm sure that that's influenced me because I listen to these things all the time.
I've never even heard of any of those. And like, there's been a couple serial, like I think the Black Tapes was one I really liked until the end, and I got like deeply invested. There's been a couple others. Baraska. Oh my God. I know they did a second season.
See, and
That
I'm not
one.
familiar with that at all. Tell me about that.
Uh, the woman who wrote it, I'm blanking on her name, but it was a Reddit, like a no sleep story, and Mike Flanagan liked it, and he ended up bringing her on as a staff writer on a bunch of his shows.
Okay.
Um, and she has Cole Sprouse is like the lead in it, who is uh I don't watch Riverdale, but he's Jughead on Riverdale. That's like his
Oh
big
yeah, yeah,
claim.
yeah.
He's been in a bunch of other stuff though.
You know what's funny is he's got a twin brother who's also an actor that I actually worked
Yes.
on another project. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I believe they're in a Jennifer Lynch movie called Chained with I think it's Vincent D'Onofrio.
Hmm.
Um, that is extremely disturbing. And I remember being like, oh man, he's awful young to be in this fucking movie. And then finding out that he had a twin brother.
Yeah.
Um, but Nebraska, they did a second season. I did not listen to it.
Hmm.
The first season, it's like it's not, maybe 10 episodes, if that. And oh man, like it really got under my skin. And that's not easy to do.
So this is an
Um,
audio drama?
yeah,
There's an audio drama by a guy who's a member of the HWA. Michael Gonzalez is the writer. It's really good and it's really dark and disturbing. You know,
Larkspur Underground.
that's it. That's it. Yeah. If you like dark, disturbing, uh, it is.
Okay, I'll check it out. Rebecca Klingel is the writer of Baraska.
Okay.
Um, but so I have not found many of those like what you're describing. So I'll check some of those out because like my girlfriend is a big true crime person. I can't do most of it.
Yeah.
It's just I just can't. Oh man.
And
Like
this isn't really true crime. This is some, I don't know what you would call the genre exactly. It's somewhere between like tales of the supernatural and in search of and strange phenomena and somewhat true crime adjacent because there's a gray area there, you know.
definitely. And that's fine. Like I like these encounters where it's like you basically somebody brushes up against what could be the supernatural, or even if, like you said, like, I mean, how many times have it's occurred to me, like, how many people have I interacted with in my life that
Yes.
have bodies in their basement? Like, what are the odds? I mean, it's at least a couple, you know?
Well, yeah, if you looked at the statistics, right, like of the amount of people you've interacted with, you must have met some murderers along the way. You just don't
Yeah.
know which ones they are. I
Yeah.
was I was in a store with a friend of mine, and there was a guy who was yelling into his cell phone one day, and he said, I don't care. I don't care. I've got him tied up in my basement and I'm gonna beat him to death. And my my friend and I are like looking at each other like, what is the best case scenario here? That we're not talking about a human that could be an animal? I mean, that's not great either, but like we just we walked out of the store and we were like, oh my God. Like,
Like, so those are the experiences. Like, so I, I don't want to get into specifics, but I grew up with somebody that was like a good friend. Like before you drive, you're kind of friends with the people that are within walk, bike, or skateboard distance, right?
sure.
And one of my friends, when we then in high school we started to drive or whatever, he killed a girl that was younger than us. I mean, he like fucking butchered her,
Oh my God.
and nobody believed he did it because it was really weird circumstances. And then after like a year being out on bail, he killed his brother.
Ugh.
So he went to jail for life, but that like shocked it whatever that was. I was like 17, destroyed my like burned my world down. I had to rebuild.
Yeah.
Um,
I have a
but
couple I have a couple of stories like that actually.
really,
Yeah, there was a girl at my high school that was in some of my classes who was very nice, very sweet. And there was a kid that called her up in the middle of the night and she went and met him and she was stabbed with a samurai sword and strangled to death. And then the kid that did that went to another girl's house afterwards that I knew, and he was washing the blood off his hands. And she was like, "What, where did you come from? What did you do?" And and they tried to get him off with this Clockwork Orange defense, saying that he had seen a Clockwork Orange and that it had such a negative influence on him that he wasn't responsible for his actions. But the jury did not buy that, and
thank God.
yeah,
Jesus Christ.
yeah. So I
Wow.
have I have a couple stories along those lines. I do wonder. There's a lot of guys that have gone into horror writing that seem to have experiences, a lot of them firsthand experiences with, think life and death, things like that. Like Stephen King, I know, right? When he was a child, didn't he go off with a friend of his and that like ended up getting hit by a train right in front of him and getting killed, I believe.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I think you're right, actually.
yeah, and Rod Serling, actually, getting back to the Twilight Zone, when he was a soldier, his commanding officer was giving some speech to the troops, and they were at war, and they were dropping troop rations, and they miscalculated where the thing of rations fell, and it like fell right on their commander's head as he was talking to them and killed him instantly.
Holy
So
cow.
yeah, yeah. So you wonder if, to some degree, people that go into horror are, I think there's a connection. A lot of them may be exposed or at least aware of some pretty bad real life horror, and that part of writing about horror is a way of processing it, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's how you it's how you deal with it. I definitely feel like that in my own head is part of my love of horror. Either I mean, writing, but also just enjoying it stems from that. 100%. It's just a
Yeah.
way to process it because you can't. I feel like the real horror are the people that like I don't want to see anything, like I can't watch anything that's horror or whatever. I mean, nothing. I don't want to cast aspersions on people like that, but I feel like I don't know. For me, for myself, it
Yeah.
feels a lot healthier to like, I mean, if you never see dirt or germs, you're going to have no immune system, right? So it's the same kind of thing. It's like a psychic immune system.
Well, George Romero said that to live in modern society, you have to kind of live in a delusion and a state of denial. But your unconscious uh, is kind of like this strange, edgy guy who's working in the factory. And every once in a while, he slips a package on your conveyor belt from your unconscious mind to your conscious mind saying, hey, you're going to die one day, you know. And it's an uncomfortable truth that if you focused on all the time would probably prevent you from being able to live any kind of meaningful life.
Yep.
But it's certainly absolutely true. So, I've always subscribed to that theory of horror too, is that it's a way for you to deal with those kinds of uncomfortable truths from a place of safety.
That's really beautifully said, David. What else about the Kickstarter should people know? Or else about your work? You also did a like a theatrical Motley Crue biography.
Well, I did a play. I did play
Yeah.
Crude, yeah, and which actually if you search for it, it's available. You can watch it for free now in its entirety on YouTube. Um, yeah, that was interesting because the whole reason I did that was that I'm a huge Motley Crue fan, and I had read The Dirt, the book, and I had seen The Dirt, the movie, and I thought they were both good. But I also felt that they left a lot of interesting and important stuff on the cutting room floor that could easily be lost to history.
Hmm.
Um, like I think that yes, they were a band that did a lot of drugs and had a lot of sex and got in trouble with the law, but lots of bands did that.
Yeah.
That wasn't really what made them interesting or special. I think that they were constantly doing things differently than other bands in terms of the types of songs that they were writing and their approach to their live show, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And they were actually much more interesting as individuals. They weren't just these happy-go-lucky brain dead hair metal party guys. They were multi-dimensional people, and I thought like I wanna write a play about all the stuff that's not in the Dirt, the book, or the movie. And ironically, Nikki Six heard about this and didn't really, I think, understand or know what it was. Just decided that he wanted to shut it down. So I got a cease and desist from his lawyer, and there was a moment in time where we were like, "Are we going to be able to do this show? Because this isn't great." But as it ended up happening, I have a friend who's a music lawyer, and there's other music lawyers in town that really don't like Motley Crue that much, and they were quite happy to offer me free legal advice about exactly what we needed to change in the play to make sure that we weren't legally liable for anything. And so we were able to do two runs of the play. Both runs sold out, and it was very well received. I like to think if any of the guys in the band actually saw it, they would appreciate it for what it is, and they probably like it, but who knows?
I mean, I have not seen it. I will watch it. You sent, I think, right when it went on YouTube, you sent me a link, and I completely forgot about it. So I've been thinking about them recently because I'm not the biggest fan. Like even the year Dr. Feelgood came out, I remember buying it and being, and so I think I was in like, I don't know, it was either sixth or eighth grade,
Yeah,
and having discussions with other kids, that were like we were all stoners, but there were the stoners that are just like, yeah, the crew. And then there was a small group. There's one guy in particular, this guy, Jay, very like astute and literate about his love of metal. So you
yeah,
could you could have a discourse with him. And I
yeah.
remember being like, I don't like this record. He's like, what don't you like about it? And really talking about it. And I just was always partial. I just think Shout at the Devil is fucking awesome.
That's my
Um,
favorite. I mean, the first two records are unbelievably great, you know.
so good.
I think the problem with Feel Good is, I mean, there's some great songs on it.
Yeah, there are, but it's not a good album.
Well, it's for the first time, that's an album in which there are several songs that are basically the same song. I mean, they're
Yes.
lyrically interchangeable. They're all just basically like generic sex songs, and they're not bad. They're fine for what they are. But there's three or four songs on that album that are essentially the same song.
Yes, absolutely. And which was kind of par for the course back then, in that
Yeah.
I also feel like at that point, that scene had become a bunch of checklists to make an album because there were
Yeah.
so many people doing it. And I think they fell into that. Who was the producer? Was it Bob Rock? It was Bob
Yeah.
Rock,
It
right?
was Bob Rock. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel like, I rest my case.
And
But I've been
sonically, that album sounds great. I mean, you got to give him credit for
it
that.
sound it's he I agree with that for sure. But I mean, then just other little things like Dr. Feelgood. At some point when I got into Killing Joke, I was like, did you literally just take the fucking riff from Love Like Blood and just use it for Dr. Feelgood? Because it's the same riff. And I know it's a riff. So it's hard to really be like, I own that, or like, but I mean, it's so distinct. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah,
Um,
I haven't heard that, but I will say, Raise Your Hands to Rock, uh, pretty directly rips off the hook to I Wanna Rock by Twisted Sister. I mean, but there is that saying, good composers borrow, great composers steal, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and that makes sense to a degree. But I've been thinking about them recently, and I did see The Dirt a couple years ago. I didn't read the book, but I remember telling my girlfriend, just look at this as like a historical perspective, because as you see the live shows ramping up, I'm like, nobody is going to do this. Like, okay, Taylor Swift is going to have whatever she has, right? Because she's just going to. But I mean, like, that is you're not going to have rock bands that do that. Like, very, very few, and even that's ebbing now. So it is unbelievable to see, like, they're just one upping, one upping, one upping.
Yeah, they were constantly pushing the limits and, being more creative in terms of their image and reinventing themselves, both musically and visually with every album in a weird sort of way, kind of like Madonna did,
Yeah, I
and
think
I
that's a
think it,
great comparison.
yeah, it kind of gave them, I think, a lot more longevity because, people might have gotten sick of other bands that came from the Sunset Strip that were more or less just repeating themselves, but they actually went out of their way to reinvent themselves with each album for a while.
So, anything else about Dr. Zamba's ghostly tales that you want to talk about?
Let's see. There's a free ghost inside every issue,
That's
uh,
fucking awesome.
and everybody who buys the comic will die. But
Now, have you ever read a Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill? Because you're freaking me out a little bit, just a little bit.
well, that's something I stole from the spook shows. I must admit, they say everybody that sees this show will die. Of course, everybody that doesn't see the show is going to die too. So,
Yeah, exactly. Uh-oh.
and my first foray into a not safe for work cover.
I
There's a
saw that.
risque cover, and then there's a not safe for work. Yeah.
So
Um,
I got the B cover. 'Cause I love it's kind of that EC kind of design, right?
yeah, the little
And then
EC
I saw the
tattoo.
not safe for work. I was like, oh, nice.
Well, listen, I mean, it's this it's story that I wrote that is dealing in an overtly sexual realm. So I thought, like, if I'm ever going to do it, this is a story
Yeah.
that actually does lend itself to it. I mean, what's funny is that we do these pinups sometimes for pages from Tinseltown, and I had Henry do a pinup that was like kind of a parody of a Baywatch. That was called like Beach Watchers. I forget exactly what it was, but that's and he did the first illustration he came back with was of Abby, and it was too good. It was too sexy. And that's a character that I'm very protective about, and I don't ever want to overly sexualize her. I mean, she's young and attractive and whatnot, but that's not what the main emphasis of her character is. So I have an illustration that's very much channeling the ghost of Dave Stevens, that the world will probably never see of Abby, but I thought this was a story that actually I could go there.
That's awesome. So free ghost, free death.
Yeah.
And it's
Um,
how many? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one cool thing, and this has been kind of overlooked, and I want more people to be aware of it. Is I invented this game called Dr. Zomba's Roll the Bones game, right? And it's
Ooh.
like it's $10 extra. You can do it as an add-on or a level, whatever. But basically, it was inspired that one of the bits of Ghost Show merch that they had from the 50s was they had little dice that each side had like a Dracula, werewolf, Frankenstein, that kind of thing. So I turned it into a game where you have Zomba, Sirena, Irgor, a ghost, a skull, Dracula, and on two pair of dice, cardboard dice you cut out, and you roll them. If you get doubles, that's negative score. If you get positive, you add it together, and then you check the whimsical rule sheet that has an explanation for what every combination actually means. First person that gets 42 points, that's the death, or 43 points, that's the death number. They win, and it's a fun game. You don't have to play it at a graveyard at midnight by candlelight, but it is highly recommended.
Okay, and the fact that you put all the work into that, right, what you just explained is absolutely fantastic.
I have
And
a lot of fun.
I mean, David, that is, wow, that's just another level. And I would definitely like, I would want to play that in a graveyard at midnight. I know the perfect graveyard too.
Oh,
Um, oh man, that is so fucking cool. Holy shit. Wow. Wow. Um, uh, how much longer is, and I know I wanted to get you on sooner and it just didn't work out, but
yeah,
how much longer is the Kickstarter up?
we're 90% funded and we're live, I think, for 10 more days.
Okay.
So, we're on track. I think we're going to get there, fingers crossed. But yeah, yeah, check it out, Dr. Zomba's Ghostly Tales, and we'd be happy to have you join the show.
Fantastic. Well, David, thank you for coming on and talking about this and just talking about horror and the horror of life and the writing horror and everything. And I wish you all the best, man. We have you back on. We'll do like a proper episode. We could talk about some, I don't know,
Yeah,
something else. But until then, people, please check out the Kickstarter. I'll put all the links in the show notes. And just, David, thank you for joining me. And so Horror Vision.
yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Great to see you. Talk to you.
Likewise.
Hapless teenagers beset by demons in the woods. A strange new drug that turns art into murder. A can't beat a deal on a new house with a horrifying past. A video game that might usher in the apocalypse. From the demented mind of Sean C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires, Shadow Play, and Murder Virus, comes Volume 4, collecting Baker's no sleep work along with several never-before published short stories. This 99-cent volume also includes the opening chapter of the author's forthcoming teenage giallo novel, Black Gloves and Broken Hearts, due out later this year.